to an event in your area, would you take any radio equipment with you so you could be part of the solution as well as the problem? And if your area was suddenly the location for an influx of evacuees from an adjacent area, when was the last time your group had a live play rest centre exercise or even a real event? That should be good enough to start the conversation. And we'll start with Mike. Golf 8, Echo Echo Yankee, G4 and RC, over.
G4 NRC from G8EY. No thinking time then. Well, weather-wise, in this part of the world, 21 centigrade, 1002 millibars, so it's quite low pressure. 72% relative humidity, 53% cloud cover, and we've still got a 5% lightning risk with a threat of rain, but it hasn't arrived yet. Winds 16.4 miles per hour from 252. Well, it depends on whether I'm evacuated with a vehicle or not, but certainly at least a couple of DMR handhelds and analog capability I would take. But it'd be nice to have the Land Rover on the way because there are lithium iron phosphate batteries on board and can run that way. Last live event, ye gods, in terms of years, quite a few, well before lockdown. And it was an interesting exercise, but I should say that's got to be about 15, maybe more years ago. So they tend to do them as desktop because it's cheaper. From G8EEY.
Golf 8 Echo Echo Yankee, G4 and RC. Sorry, was delayed because I needed to get the log right before Trevor marked it since I was typing the commentary in. Right, weather report copied, and probably the same here. Fair point about evacuating with a vehicle when we did have a flood call out in Cheshire before 2000. The locals were aware flooding was a risk and had already moved their vehicles off to high ground. So when it actually came to setting up the rest centre, nobody actually attended the rest centre because as the water came in through the doors, they left, got in their cars and just rumbled off to work with the thought that the water would be gone away by the time they got back. So, yeah, it depends on preparation time as well. Okay, and I'll come back to your comments about exercises momentarily. Next to Graham with a view of the YouTube figures from last week and this week, and any other observations. G7NEH, G4 and RC, over.
G4 and RC, G7NEH. Good afternoon, Greg. Good afternoon, all. First of all, an apology due to some audio issues. The stream didn't start till a bit later today, so my apologies for that. We are on air now, and the rest of the net will be obviously recorded and available to view. So the bits that I missed on the stream were the check-ins and the news items, I'm afraid. But I've got audio back up and running now, as I say, and the stream is going. So last week's net, I gained about 33 views and about 3 likes. So we'll see what happens to this one. I think there's 2 currently viewing at the moment. So there we go. With that, not a lot else to add from this end. G4 and RC, G7NEH.
G7NEH, G4 and RC returning. Okay, I've got a funny feeling if I look at the net before, maybe taking my face off does increase the viewing figures. Okay, thanks Graham. Understood on the audio issues. It might be one where we have another go at thinking how much redundancy we put into the system. Certainly with video from me. How else we can do that. Okay, next down to Dave, M7AVO, and thanks for the tip-off, Dave, that Raspberry Pis are becoming more available in other models. Mike 7 Alpha Victor Oscar, G4 and RC, over.
Mike 7 Alpha Victor Oscar. Yeah, good afternoon, Greg. No problems if I get an email. It's just easy to forward it to yourself and to Graham, just in case you fancy a shopping spree. I've got one here and a couple of zeros and a project in build at the minute for the duplex hotspot. So hopefully that'll be up and running in the very near future. Still undecided, as we discussed last week, whether to run PyStar or to start another system. But we shall see. We shall take views off others in the future and see how we go. Greg, back to you, Mike 7 Alpha Victor Oscar.
Try that again without the massive block packet loss. Mike 7 Alpha Victor Oscar, G4 and RC. Okay, yeah, duplex hotspot. I certainly look forward to how you get on with that. It does make life a little easier for controlling things if things go a bit wrong. Sorry, I'm just wondering where my audio is coming from at the moment. The hotspot display is telling me something totally different. So I'll fill in the Cheshire answer on breast centres, etc. when we get to the end of the list. But next to Chris, Golf 6, Papa Delta Echo, G4 and RC, over.
Good afternoon, Greg and everyone. With regard to rest centres and so on, I'm not in any immediate risk of flooding from where I am here, although we're only a few hundred yards from where there's a lot of heathland and scrub, which tend to be prone to fire. Luckily, it's damped down a bit. If I was evacuated, which is pretty unlikely, but possible, I suppose, I would take a couple of handhelds with me, and that would be about the limit. Probably wouldn't take the car. Just to mention, I'm using a hotspot today that's running. It's using a POG card with a GM340 surplus PMR radio. I've actually got a couple of these radios and a duplexer, so I was considering building it as a repeater. But then it left me wondering how one determines what frequencies to use if you're using a repeater for RAYNET use on DMR. I know there's some frequencies allocated for analog, but I've not seen any allocated for DMR. I wonder if anyone can answer that. Back to you, Greg. This is G6PDE.
6 PDE, G4 and RC returning. If Trevor can just slide that last comment in about what frequencies for DMR repeaters into the log would be appreciated. Right, the frequencies are agnostic. So the way I read the band plan, and the band plan is going to be really up in the air soon, is that we can run whatever mode we like on the emergency comms frequencies. They're designated by purpose, not by mode. But that does bring on the problem of coordination of how do we solve an interference issue between a DMR repeater and an analog repeater, both running wide split on the RAYNET frequencies. The reason I say it's all going to go a bit up in the air with the new license conditions, etc., is that as the permission comes in to be able to run such beasts at less than 5 watts without any permissions or NOVs whatsoever, but just requiring coordination, we probably need to try and get through to Ofcom that it's not just the RSGB that needs to be coordinating some of this, but we already have a coordination mechanism after a fashion with permits for RAYNET purposes on that frequency band. But if I'm putting 2 and 2 together with a comment that was made to me by an RSGB person at Friedrichshafen, we could see some upheaval in band usage and band planning, no matter what we would like to think of, and keeping DMR and analog apart might be the least of our problems, Chris. So answer at the moment is you could run a DMR repeater on the analog, what you perceive as the analog pairs, but we probably need to talk a bit more about how we deconflicted that from any other uses on a particular day. Okay, wobbled around that one and got to Trevor. G4KUJ, G4 and RC.
G4 and RC in the group. G4KUJ, yeah, good afternoon, Craig and everybody else. Just to pick up the point about frequencies for inbound on digital, on the experimental talk-through that I've got running here, I use basically the analog frequency that we used to use, which was 430.8, and then 438.4. But I have also, both on analog and digital, done an offset of 12.5, because most of the activity on 70SEMS for RAYNET around here is all 12.5 kc spacing with CTCSS for FM, and obviously the appropriate bits for DMR or even Fusion. Rest center exercises live. Like Mike, thinking back, probably 10 to 15 years is the last live exercise that I can remember, but it's a heck of a long time ago. The only other thing this week, I've checked out the QO100 system. There's an Region 1 check coming up next Saturday, which is all working fine, with a slight proviso that I've lost about 2 dBs on receive, which I think we had a very, very strong gusty winds last Monday afternoon, and it seems to have moved the dish, despite the fact that all the bolts are really torqued up. But on transmit, there doesn't seem to be any difference in that my test signal is still 1 dB above the CW beacons, which it's always been. So I guess it's just the 10 gig narrow beam that's gone off slightly. The 2.4 being a bit wider beam width there. So I might get to sort that out before the next R1 test. But if I don't, it's not going to be a problem, because most of the signals are not going to notice a couple of dBs loss on the receive side. So that's about it. Back to you, Greg. G4 and RC, G4KUJ.
G4KUJ, G4 and RC returning. Yes, and thanks for Chris's benefit. In the Spectrum forum, although asking for extra frequencies in the band plan from the RSGB would never be unlikely to go down well, for the last couple of Spectrum forums which I attend on behalf of RAYNET of the RSGBs, I have worked into the reports that we are working plus or minus 12 hertz from the existing channels, as well as highlighting some of the innovative splits that are being used by some groups, predominantly down in the southeast, to try and make multiple repeaters work in a confined space. So don't be constrained to the plus or minus 9 or plus or minus 1.6, etc. If the spare frequency is not designated to anything else and they're wide enough apart, then give it a go. Okay, Elodie's the last on this call around, so over to you. 2 Echo 0, Mike Zulu Alpha, G4 and RC.
Okay. Question, well, I have a go bag already, always prepared. What all I would need to do for that is just throw some spare batteries for my radios in there. Power bricks for at least one DMR, hotspot, and also all the necessary cables to power things up and then recharge my phone, because obviously I need internet, so I'll tether that. In terms of well, beyond that, it really does depend on whether I've got access to a vehicle or not at the time, and the nature of the actual incident. Like always, we have to be agile and adaptable to respond to the prevailing situation as we find it. In terms of the second question, don't know. I've not been a member of this group for that long, really, and I've not actually lived in the area for more than a few years, so there could have been exercises organised with user services or the EPO, but none since I've been a member of the group. 2 easy members for me for G4 NRC.
To Echo Zero, Mike Zulu Alpha, G4 NRC, and Mike Zero Golf Uniform Yankee, you are recognised and will come in next. Okay, Lizzie, thank you for that. Your observation about not recalling an exercise, not being in the area for long, there are two aspects probably. So in Cheshire, our last rest centre exercise was in two of the unitary authorities of Cheshire, not the two main parts of the county. And it was pre-COVID, so 2019, and it just involved the two unitary authorities having half a day each of being victim and rest centre organisers. And RAYNET played across both of them, as did another voluntary sector agency, providing services to both. So it was a useful shop window, but we usually struggle to get anything by way of decent traffic as if we would get from people who have been evacuated wanting to get safe and well messages back to family elsewhere, etc. So I suspect if I ask now, I'm going to get the same answer back that Mike gave earlier, that desktop exercises are cheaper. Because if you can think, we had probably 40 or 50 members of staff each from the two authorities playing for a whole day, which is a lot of money to spend on an exercise in a local authority term. And if it wasn't that, I'm sure somebody would play the COVID card as well about having so many people together in one place. So, yeah, understood that. One observation which I'm hoping Guy heard since he chipped in was a fluttering sound on your transmit that I couldn't quite understand. So we'll see if that's there on the second turn. But Guy, over to you. Hopefully you heard that we've got 300 users on the server today. Mike Zero, Golf Uniform Yankee, G4 NRC, over.
G4 NRC and 0GY. I'm just checking in. Yes. No, I'm late on parade tonight. I had a problem with my repeater, as I have just upgraded it to the Raspberry Pi 4, which finally came into stock. So I changed from a 3B to a 4, making it go an awful lot faster. Unfortunately, as with all things, no good deed goes unpunished. And one of the
Mike Zero Golf Uniform Yankee, audio dropped partway through. Was that finger trouble or more issues of the Pi change? M0 GUY, G4 NRC, over.
M0 GUI, I think I just dropped out there for a minute, apologies. Just saying I've got PopSac running now on GB7GP and messing around with that. Although, again, interesting fact is that handmajor.de seems to be having some serious problems today, in that the servers are going up and down like yo-yos, which is a real shame. I am also, therefore, interested to see if there is any interest in the group in me setting up a pager server here on the DMR server on the side for people to with their hotspots and pagers to use. The way I would envisage it, because the way the pager system seems to work, is you can only register to one. So I would write a proxy application that sits on the Raspberry Pi, and that would then act in exactly the same way as DMR Gateway does, in that it would allow you to connect to multiple pager sources, such as the Darknet, but also the RAYNET pager system, and would then be able to send pages out through that route. Again, don't know if there's any interest in that, so I'd be interested to hear if anybody's got some things on that. I'm also now paging out whenever I have an issue with any of my servers here, including the RAYNET server, so should we get disk issues or anything else popping up, then hopefully I'll get a page on it. Anyway, that's it. I'll hand it back to you. G4NRCs, Mike 0, Golf Uniform Yankee.
Okay, just got one more station might be wanting to check in before we do the second round, so I'll call him specifically in a moment. But Guy, yes, I run POXAG here, and I've been thinking about how I can use it differently. Might be worth us having a chat about how this multiple pages servers might work, but yes, I'm interested, because it would allow us to have pager groups which are separate from the ones that are organised on the German system, which seems to be very curiously managed. And if we asked for yet another emergency group on there, I'm not sure how we'd get on, because for those not aware, pager group numbering is even more constrained than DMR system numbering is. So, thanks for that, Guy. Mike 1, Charlie Yankee Tango, M1CYT via Fusion. You want to join the net, Steve? M1CYT, G4NRC, over.
M1CYT, good afternoon. I've managed to get on here now. I've been trying for weeks and didn't realise where I put into my radio. I put in RAYNET-UK because I couldn't seem to have come in on the number side of it. But yep, thank you very much for inviting me in, and I'll have a listen. Back to you. This is M1CYT in a group.
Mike 1, Charlie Yankee Tango, G4NRC. Yeah, no problem. We'd normally call in by number. We've got fewer people on the net today because some would say it's the first week of the summer holidays, which is why we've got all sorts of other issues kicking around. So slightly reduced numbers on the net, so we're having a more quality conversation rather than the rush we sometimes have later on in the year, where things get a bit time constrained. But yeah, in with good audio, no problems. So here we go. New facilities like POXAG available, all sorts of toys to work with, and not enough time. Right, let's go back around to the top of the list and see what else Mike might have thought of. Golf 8, Echo Echo Yankee, G4NRC, over.
G4NRC from G8EEY. Well, I've been looking around all the information I've got on this PC, and I can safely say that the last exercise we did was 2008 or earlier. I remember the exercise because they decided that everybody had to turn up at County Hall for a briefing before we actually did the exercise. And as the exercise was based around civil unrest in the centre of Norwich, it meant going past the area of civil unrest to County Hall, and then from County Hall past the area of civil unrest to the rest centre. So it was a bit strange. But yeah, that just shows how long ago it was in Norfolk. Yeah, it could be interesting. Any systems that could allow pager use would be quite useful. Sort of actually being able to have something that, even if you haven't got the radio turned on, you see a little light or something that says, there's been a call. That would be good from my point of view. From G8EEY.
Golf 8, Echo Echo Yankee, G4NRC. Yeah, this is one of the benefits I'm seeing from if a lot of the new license stuff goes through as it appears to. we'll have the ability, and everybody would have the ability to run on UHF up to 5 watts. Or would it be? Oh, it's UHF, it's not a primary band. We might still need to get NOVs for some of this in the new license, because at the moment there are POXAG systems attached to the DAPnet, Delta Alpha Papa net system, which is the German paging network that's pretty much planet-wide now. There are UK stations, and you've got quite a cluster of them, as I recall, across in your zone, Mike. So it has got legs over there for purposes already. But the license realization, I think, depends on us being a primary user to be able to do all sorts of interesting stuff with up to 5 watts. Otherwise, we will still have to fight for NOVs and things. Oh, another response that the operational support team leader's got to look at. Right, over to you, Graham, I think. G7 and the H, G4 and RC, over.
And RCG, 788 returning. Okay, this week's net, we've got 4 current views at the moment, and 11 views in total. Once again, sorry about the late start and the lack of audio, but one of those things. Yeah, paging facilities sounds very interesting. I know you've got some POXAG capabilities. But yeah, that would be very interesting on the national level. So that's about it from me. G4 and RC, G7 and the H.
G7 and the H, G4 and RC returning. Yeah, the other thing that Guy might elucidate on a little more when we get around to him again, paging is useful. But the pages are getting harder to find now. There's 1 or 2 sources for pages that will work on the DAPnet, and they're not quite that cheap. So one of the other things, Guy, if you want to have a quick mooch around it, was that there was also a gateway between the DAPnet and DMR messaging and vice versa. So that might be another thing possibly to think of. Because my other pet service that was never really blessed with having portable receivers was APRS. Because APRS also had the ability to bulk throw messages out to people, but you didn't exactly have a handheld APRS system that just did the display. So, okay, you're spurring some thoughts for Guy as we get further down the list. Thanks for doing the stream today, Graham, and I will make a note to change the script to remind everybody this is still a little experimental doing the streaming. Maybe Mike will comment more about it in the comm meeting tomorrow, about how we help push it forward as well. Okay, next to Dave for a final. Mike 7, Alpha Victor Oscar, G4 and RC, over.
G4 and RC, Mike 7, Alpha Victor Oscar. Yeah, paging sounds an interesting thing, Greg. I know the fire service still use paging in a massive way for on-call staff. But whether that is a totally different system in some way, I don't know. And whether a system could be used with X or redundant fire service pages. I know Cheshire have been slowly updating their pages to a different system. Whether it is going digital or is it still analog, I don't 100% know. But there has been some changes. Whether that could be looked at and using sort of redundant pages if you can get hold of them again, as you say, and they are compatible. But yeah, it's something at least perhaps looking into, and could be a good use to RAYNET as a whole. Back to you, Ged. Mike 7, Alpha Victor Oscar.
Alpha Victor Oscar, G4 and RC. My recollection, and it is just a long recollection, is that the fire service turnout pages for the retained firefighters were a local transmitter on the hose drying tower, because to get somebody turned out on a retained basis usually meant they lived close to the station anyway. I'm not sure whether they ran VHF, which is where a lot of pages used to run, or UHF, which is where the Germans have picked a frequency, which I think is in the IARU Region 1 band plan, maybe, but doesn't translate across to the UK one as widely. But there is a single UHF frequency, so you can take your pager from one country to another, and if you're in range of an amateur transmitter, you will still pick up the pages. So, okay, one to think about, and yeah, a useful hint. If the fire service frequencies are broadly compatible, it might be something we can dig into. Chris, with the hanging question about mixing DMR and analog on a frequency pair. This was one of my earlier concerns about DMR when it was first mentioned, because there is American experience where DMR has been oblivious to analog users, whereas the analog users are very, very aware that there's DMR there. So it will be something we'd have to look into and think of, or just coordinate who's got to talk through running on the day through the event booking system. G6 PDE, G4 and RCO.
G6 PDE in the group. Yeah, all the comments noted on that, and the use of the offset frequencies as well. I imagine with a bit of common sense, things can be sorted out without too much difficulty. It's not that much activity at any given time. On the pages, I sort of was interested in pages, but more from a nostalgic point of view than any other. A few years back, somebody set up a pager node on the radio tower near here, at the BT place, where I used to work, and I sort of got interested in, but the cost and availability of the pages put me off. For a similar purpose, though, I was been playing with a LoRa mesh and wondering if that could be used, because that, you set up a LoRa mesh node and then run it from your phone on Bluetooth. And everyone's got a phone with them these days, so having another pager to carry as well is another thing to carry. But of course, the battery life on the phones is much more limited than it was on the pages. So I see the benefits, and I'm just dubious about the availability of the pages. Thanks very much, Greg. Back to you. This is G6 PDE.
PDE, G4 and RC that couldn't finish typing in time. Yeah, the .NET people have got, I think, 3 or 4 pages that are still available via eBay and other places, which are compatible with the UHF frequencies they've identified. LoRa Mesh reminds me that at Friedrichshafen, I'm not sure whether Graham noticed it as well, there were people showing LoRa APRS. So since you can get an ESP32 board with a built-on LoRa modulator and 433 MHz radio, that was another way of doing it. I think the bandwidth was a little bit higher than we might see on normal channels. But what do we have? We have lots of solutions and lots of problems. Or do we have solutions looking for problems? The concern with LoRa from the RSG BBS VHF manager's viewpoint is when people take those nice low-powered LoRa mesh units and then decide to stick them into an amateur amplifier and a big antenna. And I've forgotten the name he has for it, but the spectrum grows far wider than you expect due to non-linearities in the amplifier. So you can wipe out a lot of spectrum with a well-intended LoRa mesh or LoRa node on high power, unless it's properly engineered. But okay, I've written that one into the log as well, so somebody can consider it as move forward. So thanks for taking part today, Chris. Next to Trevor, G4KUJ, G4 and RC, over.
G4 and RC in the group, G4KUJ, yeah, okay, all very interesting discussion this afternoon. Yeah, I'd be interested in looking at paging. Interested in the comments about availability of pages and so on. memory's a bit vague, but I seem to remember reading an article, I think in Land Mobile, a few months ago, or maybe within the last six months or so, which I think was written by, or an interview with the operator Page One, who I think it said is still the only outfit in this country that's providing a pager service, and they were also talking about virtually dissing the pager system and going over to a system that used GSM for the notification, and the system I think had a roaming SIM card to go with it. So I think there's other options there which the professionals are using as pages are not as readily available as they used to be. Anyway, that's about it from me. Noted there's a COM tomorrow, so I'll check in with Peter on Pactor tomorrow evening if you like. G4NRC, G4KUJ.
G4KUJ, G4NRC. Okay, Trevor. Yes, if you could pick up the National Traffic Service SCAD and see what incoming there is, that'd be appreciated. It's going to be a busy week, one way or another, with the Kiro 100 exercise next Saturday and other things I'm about to do this week, so time is going to be short. I've come across in other places where what you think is a pager is really just a mobile phone in disguise. I think the Americans actually just christened them two-way pagers, and it was a phone without a microphone. So more and more being put onto one single network. You can see the problem in that one. Moving on. Okay, thanks for assisting with the log today, and with 3 left on the net, let's go to LED, 2 Echo 0, Mike Zulu Alpha, see if that fluttering sound is still in your transmission. G4 and RC, over.
G4 NRC, 2E0 MCA, returning. Pages, yeah, very interested in potential for uses nationally, but also down to the group. The devil's going to be in the detail in terms of implementation, in terms of what system might be used, but also what's going to be receiving the page, whether it's your handheld, your handy talkie with set up with one VFO to receive APRS, or is it going to be a mobile phone with an APRS client on it? But that's going to drain the battery with a constant polling. But then again, it's down to tuning. Other systems, then you've already covered off the scarcity of pay in the box apps. Well, that the separate pages, but also there's additional costs in terms of acquiring them, carrying them, charging them. Also, what's the cost of running this additional paging system? Because if we start carrying these pages, I'm sure they're going to be relying on a commercial service. So there's really the cost of setting that up, but also running it for the groups, actually individual, how that's going to be managed and whether it's that cost effective. But yeah, it's an interesting one. APRS seems to be, it's quite flexible. It doesn't get as much use as it could potentially, and obviously it's got the messaging and but also the positioning, and those combined can be quite powerful. But again, in terms of just before I understand what paging needs to look like, and do a pros and cons assessment against each possible solution, and including functionality, cost of acquiring and running it, and all sorts, and have a conversation about which one is best fit, most cost effective, and all that kind of thing. 2E0M7E for G4 NRC.
2 Echo 0 Mike 0 Alpha G4 NRC returning. Yeah, I switched to having a pager on my belt because my workplace no longer allowed two-way radio on site. So I annoyed them by having a one-way radio instead. It is a problem back to the turnout question I raised at the start of the net with, I don't have gear in the car normally because the car goes to work and work will get uptight about having a transmitter there. So there is the issues all you raise about it is a cost. Currently enabling POXAG via a hotspot is easy in Pi-Star, so you get the paging service via the Pi-Star front end. So that's quite doable, but you do have another radio, another device you have to buy to carry around. And it's actually quite light on batteries. I've put mine on charge today, which hasn't been charged for 3 or 4 weeks. So it is useful, but as we move down to Guy and think about the way we've numbered the RAYNET talk groups and the RAYNET-UK server, we could designate 53XXXX for all sorts of group-level messaging groups and things like that. But as I recall, we still had problems about DMR messaging standards not being compatible, so we could send a message out, a text message out to all RAYNET handhelds on a particular county group or national group, and if they were in range they would receive it. But I think we had a hardware issue that some radios were far worse than others in actually interpreting SMS messaging to change the phrase for it. So, okay, all that good discussion now lands itself back on Guy, who had the good idea. Mike 0 Golf Uniform Yankee G4 at RC over.
G4 NRC 0GY. Sorry, somebody just came in on my other time slot there, so I had to just mute them. Yes, so first of all, let me go through why I am using or thinking of using this. Yes, I have gone to eBay and gone and bought one of these alphanumeric, or whatever it's called, pages, which hopefully will be here tomorrow. At the moment, I'm using a flipper to decode the pager radio transmission. It also occurs to me that yes, pagers are getting quite hard to get hold of. However, something like a Raspberry Pi Pico with a suitable radio receiver microchip on it or with it, and a little LCD display would work quite well as a pager receiver, and fairly light on the battery consumption as well. I haven't thought much more beyond that at the moment, but I'm thinking that might be something that we could explore, and a bit of 3D printing to build a nice case to stuff it in. I don't see that as being overly arduous to develop. The reason I'm building it, or looking at POGSEC, is purely because I need to be able to monitor my machines with a bit more alacrity than I have at the moment. So machines crash, instances, services, functionality stops working, and when I'm not sitting in front of the computers, I'd like to know about it. Now, I could, as people have said, use GSM and get notification through an SMS or through an app on my phone with GSM and data and so forth. But what I'm also thinking about is, well, actually, I have a thumping great big repeater here that is completely independent of everybody else, and why not use that to pass the traffic? That way, if my internet goes away or anything in the upstream path, I still have the capability of getting that message out to me. And again, it really only needs to come out, or is only valuable if I'm in the vicinity of the area, especially if the internet's gone, then we're done. So hence thinking of paging, and of course it's cool and it's fun, and I've not done it yet, so why not? But yes, for me, that's the main thing, is to monitor my systems here and send out notifications to let me know when bad things are happening. For RAYNET side of things, I am thinking, yes, it would run on the DMR server, just on the side, so use the same database, same system to a large degree, so there would be a zero cost in extending the DMR server to handle POGSAT messages. I'm not expecting thousands of messages per day, so we've got plenty of headroom to handle that traffic that would come up from it. And yes, people could either set up the repeaters for those of us that are running a repeater that's hooked into the RAYNET server. For those that are not, then you're probably already running a hotspot, in which case augmenting the hotspot to be POGSAT as well. It's just a tick option. As I say, we'll need to have a little gateway service if you want to maintain 2 POGSAT instances, i.e. to the darknet and to the RAYNET one. But I don't see that as being overly dramatic and troublesome. But then, yeah, we could absolutely, and I've noticed this as well on the
G4NRC, guy timed out, wonder when you notice.
Oh, G4NRC N0GY, sorry, lost the link there for a sec. Just to say, I'm only really interested in going local, so I want to send to my hotspot or my repeater group that a server has failed, because it's of no interest to anybody else. Yes, of course, my pager ID will be in the front, so nobody else gets to see it, but it's obviously logged, so let's send them to where they need to go. And yes, if we are going to do that, then we can absolutely have different groups for different repeaters and hotspot areas, and send appropriate messages to the appropriate destinations associated with that. And because I've already timed out once, I will leave it alone for the moment. G4NRC, this is Mike Zero, Golf Uniform Yankee. Thanks for running the net, Greg.
0 Golf Uniform Yankee G4NRC. Couldn't resist it, guy. Actually, I didn't mind the long over because I've got the DAPNet app up and was trying to send you a message to be annoying partway through your over, but as you observe, the central server is flaky and it's complaining I don't have a connection to it at the moment. What was meant to be a holiday project never quite worked, was to equally get my pager when I'm in the house working a bit better on telling me what I want to know. Not necessarily server failures, but just have it watch for events and let me know of things that are happening without me having to persistently watch the news or doom scroll on a mobile phone. So, useful conversation all, but nonetheless. And I'd forgotten that flippers, which I keep widely getting advertised as hacking tools, but yes, they are hacking tools, okay, there isn't a but about it, but are very useful for finding out what's going on RF. It can also be programmed up to service pages, and they are available as well. So, yeah, another topic for discussion which we can work through. Okay, thanks, Guy. Thanks for everything you do. And final one on the net that's gone slightly longer than usual. Steve, Mike 1, Charlie, Yankee Tango, G4NRC, over.
M1CYT. Yeah, I'm afraid I haven't got anything to put into it, but it's nice actually listening to you on the radio rather than via YouTube. So I'll say thank you very much for running in there, and hopefully next week I will try and get in via RF and via my hotspot rather than just watch and listen to you on YouTube. So back to you there. Thank you very much, and hopefully catch you all next week. This is M1CYT in a group.
Mike 1, Charlie, Yankee Tango, G4NRC. Yeah, no problem, Steve. That's why the net's here. Test your hotspots, bring all your issues, etc. Guy flipped and didn't comment on LED's audio, but I still noticed some fluttering on your transmit LED. I don't know what it is. If it was analog, I'd say you were driving very, very fast. But there's something there motorboating away in the audio amp chain that was audible even though you're on DMR. However, we've gone over time. The YouTube stream needs to end. We need to give some repeaters back to the 14 repeaters that are connected to the RAYNET network. So I'll thank everybody for taking time out of the schedules to participate this afternoon. Be careful, have a good week, and until next Sunday afternoon. Close the RAYNET-UK weekly activity net and return the talk groups to being an open net rather than a directed net. 7 trees, this is Golf 4.